Hello everyone, Coming Clean here. Even though the series was cancelled a few years back, people all over the world are still collecting Skylanders. There's a lot to take in general, but one of the most overwhelming things is the sheer amount of playable figures you can collect. To help people out, I am in this video listing 3 Skylanders for each game that I think are essential. Let's get started. First off, I have not picked these Skylanders because I think they are the best ones, the coolest ones or anything like that. I've chosen them simply because they represent something important about each game that I think you'll be missing out on if you don't pick them up. That being said, everything comes down to taste, so many of you are bound to disagree with me. And if that is the case, please leave a comment so we can get the discussion going. Now, to my list. For the first game, Spyro's Adventure, I've picked Spyro himself as my first essential Skylander. He's of course the poster boy and he makes appearances in the sequels in various ways, like in cutscenes or as a playable repose. He's also the main character in the Netflix show Skylanders Academy, and even though that show takes place in a different universe, Spyro is an important character to establish a connection with to get the most out of this franchise. He's also a lot of fun to play, one of my personal favorites from Spyro's Adventure. He's quick and nimble with his flight ability, and his charge attack and fireballs that you can fire when on the move encourages you to never slow down. Next up we have Prison Break. This might seem like an odd pick to some since he's arguably not the funniest Skylander to play as, at least not at first glance. He does however represent something in this game that you don't get from the plentiful characters with more straightforward abilities. To get the most out of any given Skylander, button mashing is not the best way to go, but with Prison Break it isn't even an option. Strategically placing prisms and shooting his beam into them to control the battlefield is what it's all about, and perfecting this skill is the only way to mitigate his slow movement speed and lack of options to damage enemies up close. In that way, Prison Break manifests that the Skylanders games are not necessarily games for kids, but rather for families, as it offers a more complex way to approach the game. Last of my essential picks for Spyro's Adventure is Stealth Elf. She's also a character that became more and more prominent as one of the main characters as the series continued. Just like Spyro, she has been represented by several reposes in the sequels and also an important role in the Skylanders Academy TV show. In the game, she represents the melee glass cannon archetype, and thanks to her dodge and stealth skills, she also gets a unique hit-and-run playstyle that is more common to other types of action games rather than dungeon crawler action RPGs that this game is at its core. There are several more fun characters in Spyro's Adventure, but those were my 3 essential picks. Moving on to Skylanders Giants. In this game, the Giants were the obvious focus, but some new core Skylanders were released too, and the first one I think is essential to own is Popfizz. This little troll-like creature is not only terrifically designed, he also has a moveset that was very complex when compared to the other Skylanders that were released at this time. Popfizz's main attack throws a potion, and with the press of a button, you can switch his currently held potion between 3 different options, altering the way his main attack works. Popfizz can also drink his potion, turning himself into a beast, making him go from cute to menacing. In this mode, your attacks also change depending on your held potion. Everything adds up to a one-of-a-kind moveset, giving you a Skylander that can adapt to the situation like no other. Next up we have another core Skylander in Fright Rider. This character, or rather characters, have a moveset that is very straightforward, but the uniqueness lies in them being a duo, consisting of an elf riding on a skeletal ostrich. Not many Skylanders have this gimmick, making Fright Rider a solid pick for your Skylanders Giants roster. And of course, the old ostrich trope of burying your head under sand is here, but is also accompanied by a teleport, alongside the very expected jousting rush attack. I needed to include a giant on this list, and since I'm not a huge fan of these lumbering beasts, I had to pick the quickest of them all. Swarm is a giant insect who merely shoots his opponent from afar and turns himself into a swarm for area damage. His flight ability makes him much more nimble than the rest of the giants, and it synergizes well with his main attack as you can strafe around the battlefield while safely bombarding your opponents from a safe distance. Swarm was the given giant pick on this list, as he with his swiftness represents the best of 2 worlds. We are now moving on to Swap Force, and this one was tough as there are 16 swappers and just as many new cores to choose from. My first pick however was the Riptide, one of the new core Skylanders. He stands out a bit in being not a sword wielder, as there are plenty of those, but rather a fencing swashbuckler with an aquatic pirate theme. He equips a swordfish for quick attacks or a shark for wider, more damaging swings. With his secondary attack, he throws away his equipped weapon, switching it for the other, making his gameplay feel more dynamic than most. Oh, and he has a giant whale to swing around too. The swappers are a very entertaining bunch, so they need to be represented too. It's also hard to pick which ones are essential and which ones are not, but Boomyet is a character that I think as many people as possible should enjoy. Throwing bombs around like they are footballs is just awesome in itself, but combining them with airstrikes and swift dashes on your jetboard adds plenty of fun as well. With the right upgrades, your thrown bombs can become huge and your jetboard can shoot propellers. I don't think I need to say more. Another, in my opinion, essential swapper is Trap Shadow. This character really has it all. His traps can be either thrown offensively or placed on the ground for stage control, and his snappy kick attack doubles as a projectile. There's also no other swapper with the same level of ferociousness to the main attack as Trap Shadow. This dark, roguish cat character is not really represented anywhere else in the different Skylanders games, especially combined with such a versatile moveset. But even with all the tools at his disposal, finishing off enemies with your regular swipe attacks never gets old. Now we are at game number 4, Skylanders Trap Team. Many characters for this game, especially the cores, are relatively rare, and unfortunately my first pick, Rocky Roll, might be a bit hard to track down too. I am fortunate enough to own him as he was a gift to me from a couple of viewers. If you manage to get a hold of him too, you found a unique Skylander for sure. Rocky and Roll are a duo of stone golems, and the way they move around the battlefield is unique in itself. They're also versatile with their moveset mixing both range, melee and area of effect attacks. They can spit out boulders in all directions and also enter a brawler-like bouncy attack mode that is just as fun as it sounds. Another favorite of mine from this game is a trap master called Gear Shift. There are several Skylanders that can switch their main attack, but very few have 3 different versions and none alters the way you play like Gear Shift's mechanic does. It also looks extremely cool when their hoop weapon changes form. Switching characters in the Skylanders games are essential to keep things from feeling repetitive, but with Gear Shift you can just shift your weapon configuration. The 3 attack modes are all useful under different circumstances, but you can also at any time jump inside your giant gear and cartwheel attack your opponents. Gear Shift is just such a great example of a weird gimmick being perfectly translated into a fitting and versatile moveset. My last pick for Skylanders Trap Team is Tough Luck. She's first off a playable Mabu, the race more or less exclusively reserved for NPCs, so there is the representation aspect to take into account. She also possesses a perfect balance between stealth and aggression, as she can hide from her enemies in the grass she creates herself at the same time as she can leap attack with her dual Traptonium blades. This is another Skylander with a versatile kit you don't want to be missing out on. Now we have arrived at Superchargers, my favorite Skylanders game, so my picks for this game were very hard to narrow down. One character that I knew I would include though was Stormblade. She's unique in the sense that she was the first Skylander to be designed to have moves that work differently while airborne, making her able to swoop down from the skies to shower her enemies with their knife/feather contraptions. She's also as speedy as they come and a genuinely fun Skylander to use, and her design is over the top in a good way, as she looks awesome in her feather plume that she wears as a cape that is in fact built up by knives rather than feathers. My next pick for an essential Skylander for Superchargers is one that really has it all. Deep Dive Jilgrant can dash, shoot, strafe, electrocute and stab, and he has to be one of the most versatile Skylanders in the entire franchise's roster. He's also a classic character, as he appeared as a starter back when the first game, Spyro's Adventure, was released. His supercharger version retains much of what made him special in the first place and elaborates on it. And he has a boat that looks like a fish, fins and all. My last essential pick for Superchargers is luckily a character that you probably already own if you bought the game, as it's the original starter, Spitfire. He is a very fast Skylander, giving him gimmicky abilities like jumping from enemy to enemy extremely quickly and dashing around the world, allegedly. His satisfying up-close punching combo synergizes well with his quick movement abilities as you make equally swift entrances into and escapes from combat. Spitfire is simply a very satisfying Skylander to use. We now arrive at Imaginators, and narrowing all the very enjoyable senses down to 3 was again very difficult. One sensei I wouldn't miss out on, however, is Aurora. She's also extremely fast, and yes, I like fast Skylanders, but her speed is integrated into her playstyle in a unique way. You need to purchase her momentum ability on her fastest Skylander alive path, but once you do, your damage is greatly increased a few seconds after using her dash move. Her momentum ability really deserves its name, as now your entire damage output is dependent on you never slowing down to constantly keep the damage buff going. This is just an immensely funny way to play the game that no other sensei offers in the same way. Flare Wolf isn't actually my personal favorite wolf-inspired sensei. That would be Wolfgang. I am, however, picking Flare Wolf on my list anyway, as I think he's more flashy and most likely more enjoyable for most players. This is a list about unique Skylanders too, and no other sensei can shoot themselves into the air and parachute down while bombarding their enemies with rockets. You'll have to get used to the long startup lag on most of his moves, but once you do, burning everything around you and riding a rocket across the battlefield as you spew missiles all over the place is something that every Skylanders player needs to experience. Flare is usually relatively pricey on the used market, but he might actually be worth paying a little extra for. My final Sensei pick might be a bit of an odd one, as Crash Bandicoot is a more straightforward and charismatic character, but Dr. Neo Cortex really offers a much more unique experience in my opinion. I'm not a fan of the Source's battle class, and I think Cortex's character design is wacky and goofy, but not all that appealing. But his moveset is one of the most fun to use out of all the senseis. He can ride around on his hoverboard while spitting mines behind him, meaning he has a high mobility option, but at the same time he can also drop down his Entropy staff, which slows all enemies that are close by down, and it also enhances your main attack in different ways, giving Cortex a possibility to make a more strategic approach as well. In short, this is a sensei that is much more fun to play than he looks, and he might surprise you too. Those were my 3 picks for 3 essential Skylanders from each game. If you can think of a Skylander that you think is a must-own for any of the games, please leave it in a comment. Also, feel free to check out my video about why you should start collecting Skylanders in 2023. Thank you for watching. My name is Clean, and I will see you next time. Take care!